Good
Hey,
afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thanks for tuning in. Happy today to have you on. We appreciate you being here with us. We have a special guest today, Harvey Carroll. Harvey has, ran out of the Ukraine, thank God, with his family. He got himself out, got his family out. He's a real survivor. He's a cancer survivor as well, many times. I think it's 3 times over. That he's a cancer survivor. We're honored to have him here today. We want to hear his story. And plus, we want to talk about one of the most complicated, worst killers in my generation that I'm aware of. We can check all the boxes with Vladimir Putin and what he's done to the Ukraine and the people of the Ukraine. Everybody's innocent here until proven guilty in a court of law. With that all being said, let me introduce Harvey Carroll. Harvey, so good to see you. So good to have you. I'm so happy you made it out with your family. Talk about what you'd like to talk about.
okay. First of all, I'm very honored that you're having me on. We've discussed the Delphi case for many, many years. And honestly, you didn't know it, but our discussions in profiling Putin leading up to the invasion helped in the calculus of me making decisions to get the hell out of there. And also, I shared that with embassy people and other think tanks that I was dealing with to help anticipate his moves. So you may have saved a lot more lives than you think. You're definitely one of the top profilers in the world. There's no doubt about it. You and your crew have
Very kind you.
have helped, hunt down and capture people in the body counts of hundreds. So, I respect you greatly, and I learned so much on the Delphi case with you. Sandra and I, we watched your Dark Mind series, and she was like, "You think you would come in and help us?" I'm like, "I hope so," because I have no clue about criminal profiling, psychological profiling, and understanding that type of mentality is just beyond my comprehension. Granted, I've dealt with some mass murdering dictator types, and there are similarities that I found, by our discussions. But criminal profiling, getting into those people's mind it was just beyond our, skill set. And we appreciate everything that you did, guiding us through, and you all putting out those videos and so forth to help people in the Delphi case. And you brought real class to it at a much higher level than you see with the YouTubers on the case, obviously. And we worked extremely hard. And I think combined, we probably put out thousands of more information on that case, finding like 70 plus people to be at near the bridge, comparing, contrasting all that with their witness suspect matrix, et cetera, et cetera. So we did a lot of work together over the last few years. As far as leaving Ukraine, common sense, good profiling, good anticipation of what was in Putin's mind and understanding his capabilities. And, was it like the 80s Cold War? Was he really doing drills like we did, during the Cold War? And I've been, coming from the other side, moving troops in Germany to the former Soviet Union border. Was he doing that as he was saying, or was he more sinister, more evil in his thinking, like you and I discussed? And did he have the capability of invading Ukraine based on his past performance? You always told me past performance predicts future performance. So in Homs and Aleppo, he basically destroyed those cities in Syria with al-Assad. And we come to realize that he had those capabilities in his mind. And based on my experiences of dealing with the Gulf War, organizing military forces, making advisements, of course, we went after military targets. Putin went after civilian targets, destroying cities systematically. We knew, I knew that he had that ability and mindset. So when I saw certain things in place, as well as those 4 destroyers going through the Bosphorus Strait, anticipating Tuesday and Wednesday going through a day to get over the Black Sea, he would be in position to hit targets all over Ukraine. So I left the night before. My son he speaks 3 languages, English, of course, American passport, Russian, and Ukrainian. And he saw some false flag issues in the East. And he believed a little bit earlier that it was best to go. So they went to the western part of Ukraine. I stayed there and then left the night before and basically trained to myself, the entire compartment, etc. A day later, 4,000 to 6,000 people on a train built for 200 people. And because of this, analysis, understanding Putin's mindset, we were able to, even though we were in the country when it was being bombarded and targets hit fairly close to us, we were able to get over the border before the 30-mile lines and so forth. So pretty tough initially. And we did have somewhat of an exit strategy, and people were reaching out to us to help us in other countries far away from the border, so we could do, various things that we needed to do to get a roof over our head and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing, first of all, I want to thank you for your kind kudos in our opening here. I truly appreciate that. And I'm really honored. And, we've worked hundreds of cases, but in all honesty, it's up to law enforcement, and law enforcement gets the credit for catching these guys. We are a tool. We think we're a good tool, but it's up to law enforcement. Law enforcement has to, do the legwork, ultimately make the arrest, and ultimately, we'll take what they give us. But we're not, the grand slam of solving murders. I mean, it's when you have murders where you have stranger on stranger murders, they are extremely hard to solve. And God bless law enforcement, they've got a lot of work on their hands. More interesting to me is your survival and how you pulled it off. And here you are. And, going back to the Delphi case, before I forget, people need to know, and I'll be the first one to say this, regardless of how Delphi turns out, right, wrong, or indifferent, because we've been at these places before where you're going to have various people of interest, and you're going to have some people you can't clear, and you might not be able to clear, until the very end, until somebody gets caught. And hopefully somebody does get caught. But, there's something else too. You can actually catch somebody, but not be able to prove it in a court of law. So let's just keep it positive and let today be the day, and in our prayers. Most importantly, if it was not for you and your team, we would never be involved in Delphi. I think we have really helped in Delphi. I think, and know you have helped in Delphi. I think other YouTubers have really helped in Delphi. I give the credit for not capturing the killer of Abby and Libby yet. That hasn't happened. But where I think the YouTube people can really take credit, the YouTube directors and producers can really feel good about what they've done for the people that have done it for the right reasons, is because pretty much the goal, and our goal in the beginning, was to keep this guy low and keep him on the run. We wanted him to stay on the run. Abby was gone. Libby was gone. We didn't want to see another girl die. We didn't want to lose another girl. So let's put out information that can keep this guy low and keep him on the run. And I believe all of us, okay, the whole YouTube community, okay, was able to do this because we kept putting out various information, whether it was right, wrong, or indifferent. And I know what we did, and the method of our attack was done very, very well. And our focus was on behavior, because you can change your looks, but you can't change your behavior. And you can change your geography, but it's very hard to change your behavior. And that's why we just kept banging away. And I think we've been somewhat pretty much successful, all of us working together. Let's see where it goes, and let's see what comes out of it. Personally, again, if you guys didn't contact us and call us up, as far as I was concerned, I mean, I saw this when the case took place. I watched it. I saw, the guy on the bridge, and Libby got the picture and everything. Well, as it came across the news 5 years ago, I just looked at it and thought to myself, well, they'll have this guy in a day or two. They got his picture.
I thought the same.
So I said, well, I'm not getting, why get us involved in this? Law enforcement's going to have this guy in a day or two. They got his picture right there. And then I heard it. They had his voice. Well, they got his picture. They got his voice. But I didn't know anything about pixels or far away, or I didn't know what was involved in this case. And it was, I didn't know how complicated it was going to turn out from the video. Thank God Libby got the video, but it's still obviously not an easy case to solve. I think they're really, really, really on the right track now. So we're going to see what happens. But if we didn't hear from you, we don't get involved. I mean, it's just that simple. Tell me more about Putin. You know Putin. You're living not too far from Putin over there. I mean, what do you think about him? What's his makeup? How do you feel about him?
Well, I'll touch real quick on the Delphi, and then I'll jump into that.
Okay.
I spent 5 years on Delphi, so it's hard to give that up, right? I looked at it from an investigator's side, mm-hmm. And some of my family friends, they're like, you've done a lot of things. You worked on terrorism, anti-terrorism, yada, yada, yada. As a military police, you did things in different countries. You did some investigations. You've been through a couple federal law enforcement schools. You've got some skills. You've got a lot of time on your hands. You're laying around on the couch, right? So I laughed. I'm like, there's hundreds of Indiana State Police and FBI, 25 different law enforcement agencies involved, et cetera. They certainly don't need me. And like you said, you had the video and the audio. It'll be done quick. But I just had surgery. I'd lost a kidney, before, a spleen, tail of my pancreas, part of my large intestine, and half my thyroid on another surgery right after. So I was laying around, cut half in two with few organs left. And I started watching YouTubers, Cat, Greeno, a few others, Randy Gravitt. And I'm like, well, I'll communicate with these people. I'll ask them, show us the area. Ask Greeno to recreate, the crime, show us the entry, the exit strategy, or possible exit routes. And he and Cat did. Cat even climbed the tree stand over there on the north end for us and looked around. Could he have been sitting there? Could he have came from the cemetery, etc.? And they started giving me a little bit of a rough time because I said there was a lot of people out there. And Sandra, I teamed up with her, and she had the amazing ability to juggle massive amounts of information. Whereas I was more structured and focused on creating that witness suspect matrix of the list of people across, and then the various characteristics from head to toe to compare and contrast Bridge Guy with. And we found 1, 2, 3, then a few others. And then I started making provocative videos, and she would mine 200 Delphi groups or more to collect intel and find people that were actually at and near the bridge. A daunting task, massive task. And there's times I'm laying there so weak I can't get up, and I'm getting 200 and 300 messages, right? And then we have to vet those, go through it, make sure that those people were actually at near the bridge. Then we had various groups set up, geocaching groups, police log groups, finding police stops in the area, etc., comparing, contrasting those people, catfishing groups, you name it, we had it. And we would create teams that would analyze these people, verify that they were actually there. And we were seeing people that you would just not even begin to imagine that they could be Bridge Guy, right? Those are the kind of people that were hiding in plain sight, and we couldn't get in their mind. I'm like, no way, it couldn't be that person or that one. And we started watching your Dark Mind series, and we started thinking different that, well, maybe we can't rule out anybody. We cannot prejudge anybody at near that bridge, right?
Can't judge a book by its color. You can't judge a book by its color. Go ahead.
Exactly. So Sandra said, well, you think he would be interested in helping us some way or coming in? And I'm like, I don't know. Let's try. Let's contact him. And of course, I was overseas and could not call without paying a fortune at the time. I was too stupid to use Skype, right? So I asked her to call you, and you all had a meeting, and then you all came in and basically enlightened us because we were in over our head. We didn't understand. And I mean, who walks down the street and sees a teenager like a predator, without being able to really understand how these people work? And you sat across so many of them in prison and so forth and help hunt them down and catch them, that you were able to communicate to us that you can't prejudge. And so that really elevated our work. And I think it elevated and inspired the people that were watching the Delphi case. And you brought this higher level of class to it, like Hoosier the Bruiser said, that allowed people to work even harder and help us, get all these people listed and compare and contrast. And we have 16 to 20 people that we funneled down from probabilities or possibilities to probabilities, and maybe even a few more down to more probable, that had time, opportunity, possible skills based on David Erskine's text of how the girls were killed. And of course, we shared all that information with law enforcement. And it was a big hobby for me and allowed me to use my old investigative skills, law enforcement training, and gave me something to do other than laying around feeling sorry for myself because I was too weak to walk, 100 yards to even get on a bus and go somewhere. And it took me a very, very long time before I could do anything. And then I saw that, well, we've done all this work and we keep adding people to the list. Let's keep it going. Let's keep going. And it turned into a 5-year quest that was just, a lot of headaches. And many times I was going to quit. You're like, Harvey, that's the way these things go. You got to take a break, relax, come back when you feel refreshed. And I probably would have quit several years ago if y'all hadn't have kept encouraging, and based on your experience of seeing how these things go. But it's been very interesting, and it wasn't my expertise. My expertise was land development, construction, real estate, and of course, political policy making. And I have dealt with, I've written 9 books, political books.
Yeah. And see, that's the other thing. You have really good books. And, if anybody's interested, they should go to Amazon, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They're on Amazon.
Really good, interesting books, and Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. But I think Amazon's the place now. I mean, where else do you go, right, to get books?
Right.
I mean, it's pretty much
right. You've got one there as well, I think, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And it's I dealt with mass murdering dictator types, sort of like you hunting serial killers. I took on the task of finding ways to reduce the threats from those people. And I wrote books about them. I'll not go into that. We'll go into Putin. And, looking back, Putin, obviously, he's amassed great wealth. They're saying that he's one of the richest men in the world. And a lot of that was through, his corruption umbrella, with various criminal enterprises underneath it. And that political power and profits has allowed him to become have full autocratic control of the state and maintain that group of profiteering vultures that shield him. And maybe we can touch on a little bit more. You enlightened me that some of those people have been killed. Any of them that seem to be a threat have died. And I know a few too, and maybe we could just touch on that a little bit. You mentioned some of those people recently.
We've just seen recently, I think we've got 6, maybe 7.
Really? That many? Wow.
And that's in a short period of time. And a couple families were annihilated. So it wasn't only the oligarch that was murdered, but the entire family was murdered. So it's very interesting. I mean, you see all this death and destruction circulating around Putin. It's like, what's going on here? And, I'm telling you, it's just, as far as I'm concerned, it's just an evil situation. I mean, I see all these poor people running out of the Ukraine. I see all this damage to the Ukraine. I see all these lives lost in the Ukraine, men, women, children. I mean, the whole thing is just insane. I mean, megalomaniac, we could call him. We could call him a mass murderer. If you go to individual people that were knocked off over the years by, the Russian communist government, I mean,
like Nitsov, for instance, the man shot on the bridge, I think he was looking to expose the proxy conflict he had going on in the east of Ukraine, as well as the vast expenditure of the Olympics in Sochi, Russia. I think it was like 10 times the normal amount spent on an Olympics. And he, was inferring the possibility of that money being funneled into Putin enterprises, criminal enterprises. And of course, his opposition, Navalny's been jailed. He started out when he was the head of the city administration in St. Petersburg, like an advisor to the mayor, deputy mayor kind of situation. There was 90 something million dollars in aid that was stolen, and he was investigated. Then possibly the dirt that he had on Yeltsin led to him getting a presidential appointment, then his rise to power in the national and international stage. And then soon after that, he basically stole the Russian gas giant from Korodowski, I think that's his name, and jailed him. So he's got a long history of either jailing or possibly assassinating any of those people that threatened him. And now you've mentioned 7 or 8 more. That's just insane. And yeah, what he's doing in Ukraine, NATO and the US over 30 years dealing with sanctioned UN conflicts, dealing with, hunting down Osama bin Laden, dealing with Saddam, Gaddafi, et cetera, et cetera. Putin has killed more people in a short time, did more destruction on civilian targets. All civilian targets, NATO military targets. Just total different mindset. He's just systematically destroying city after city after city and having more than 10 million, some have said even 15 million displaced, and refugees, 4 or 5 million, I think, have left Ukraine. And I know how it is to leave with basically, the clothes on your back, a little more, some documents and things like that. And we had some help, some of my subscribers, some of my Facebook friends, you, of course. I've been happy with just the postage. So I'll not get into that, but appreciate that. And all those people helped us. There's millions of people have no help, no shelter, no food, struggling, and it's created such a humanitarian crisis that it's just unfathomable, unimaginable. And not only that, like the Holodomor during Stalin's starvation, I think 1922, something like that. Not sure of the date, but he basically starved Ukrainians to death. And they're going in and destroying infrastructure, stealing tractors, stealing combines, stealing hundreds of tons of grain. And that is going to create a lot of hunger throughout the world because Ukraine's like the breadbasket of the world.
I saw millions of whatever, tons or whatever, but like millions of I think it was tons of grain. They're not going to be, produced by Ukraine. It will create famine throughout the world. That's what the news is. Yeah.
Yeah, it will. It's just horrible. And not only in Ukraine, the whole world's going to be affected by it. And I don't think we could pick up the slack in the U.S. and other producers of this grain. It's just shocking. So, there's going to be a price shock in all these, bread basket issues. It just blows your mind. And they're not going to be able to produce for a long time because they're in a war zone in many of these regions that are major producers. So this could go on for years. He fought Chechnya for 9 years and it was small compared to Ukraine. So I think obviously those actions of profiteering, he's going to make tons and tons of money off of it. He's making tons of money off gas prices going up in Russia. He don't care about those people. He don't care about the price shocks and so forth because he's profiting from it in some way. But I think people are going to start feeling the sanctions and all those effects. And there's going to be some problems. There's going to be some uprising. But he's the kind of person, he sends those stormtrooper type people out and beats them out of the street every time they start to protest. And he has no problem killing them, making them disappear.
Yeah, and it's just unconscionable, to think about somebody that just, he has no problem at all. He doesn't seem concerned with human lives. And again, I think that has a lot to do with communism in general. Okay. If you notice, the biggest enemy to communism is any religion, any kind of religion. And the communists, they're not really big on having religious freedom throughout their countries. And, because they feel it's organized and they don't want anything religion or anything else to buck their power. So I think there's a lot of that going on. I think that's one of the biggest fears they have with the United States. With the United States, you have a conglomeration of people that are all different, but you also have a conglomeration of religions that are all different. And, you see what he did to Chechnya, and how he destroyed Chechnya. And, it's pretty much in any kind of communist country, the major enemy is any kind of, organized religion of any way, of any person, and or group of people. And I think what's important is this country needs to come together, because I don't know where this is all going, but this is obviously a man who has, severe psychological problems, as far as I'm concerned. And, you're looking at a gangster who's got probably a paranoid personality disorder. And he's got a crew of, that's a complete army. He's a gangster with an army and a gangster with nuclear weapons. Like I said, with a paranoid personality disorder. I think people, if he even dreams you're thinking about bucking him in some way, you're gone. This guy's not playing around. Look what he's done to the Ukraine. I can't believe what he's done to that country. That country, was destroyed. I never seen anything like that.
We discussed like
World War II. We're watching an old World War II movie or something, after a major bombs.
We discussed that, remember? We were talking, well, look what he did to Homs. Look what he did to Aleppo. He could do that in Ukraine, but we didn't believe that he would do it in a way. We were, it was a 50-50 toss-up, and it was hard to accept that he could do that. But we knew that he could do it. And he is doing it, is the sad thing about it. And I think you're right on religion. Ukraine and Russia separated religion. Ukraine now has their own patriarch in charge of the Orthodox Church. Good man, honorable man, has been for years. Kirill, the patriarch in Russia, opposite, wears around a $30-something thousand Rolex watch and is basically a puppet for Putin, supports his policies, supports his atrocities, basically genocidal attacks on civilian cities, right? Supports it. The communists of the past silenced religion, and the Orthodox Church in Russia is silent. They go in, they chant, swing the incense. They don't preach. They don't lecture. They don't complain and give a voice that would counter Putin's ideologies. And he's even put out executive orders. If you present an opposing view of that, it's considered treason. So he's got the masses silenced. He's got the patriarch church as a puppet, and that's a big problem. That's total control. Unlike the U.S., and we have a constitutional democracy where we have, term limits, checks and balances, and a people-driven constitution that helps us develop a more civil, participatory society, where there it's top-down, oligarchical, and autocratic. And what he says goes. Same thing with Lukashenko in Belarus, that's his partner in attacking from the north. That person's been, both have been in power for decades. It's just insane. And yeah, the paranoia, it's not only Putin's personal paranoia, the old KGB indoctrination has allowed him to subordinate his humanity to state servitude. So his paranoia, and he's creating that paranoia with the state to where he is Russia. Any decision he makes is subservient to the state. And if we start bringing up profile points like visionary, usually if you're a visionary type person, you're hearing voices and all that. But Putin is, he's not nuts, but he is very manipulative. He manipulates the meager minds of the masses of Russia and garners 75+% by putting out total bullshit. He's got these people believing that Nazis, he's fighting Nazis. With the Jewish president, it would be laughable, right?
Yeah, I'm still trying to wrap my head around that.
Right. If he wasn't destroying cities, it would be laughable. And he's got them believing this stuff. So he's creating that visionary delusion of grandeur that he's fighting something out there that doesn't exist, but the Russians are believing it. And also he's got this grandeur to rebuild the Soviet Union, which all those former Soviet Eastern Bloc states, except for Belarus and part of Moldova, basically made a mad dash to the West as soon as the Iron Curtain fell. And I've been in many of those countries, and they don't want anything to do with the Soviet Union. They wanted out of that dark cloud, anti-religious, human connection kind of mentality. They wanted out of that freaking police state mentality, right? And they've been better off for it. They've developed new roads, new jobs, new schools, et cetera, et cetera. All those Eastern Bloc countries are doing great. And I was in Bratislava for over a month, love that city, talked to many people, and they cannot fathom that this is happening in today's world. And they had talked about the cloud of the past, the old Soviet control, and even they had been somewhat invaded, I think, in the 50s or 60s, and they told me stories about some of those things. And those former states do not want to be part of the Soviet Union. So he's delusional. It's not going to happen. He's angry about that, and he's willing to try to create destruction and say that could happen to you, and then strong arm with the gas tactics to try to bring back those former Soviet states into his fold, but it's not happening.
Yeah, no, it did. You know, from where I sit, the way I'm looking at this, I mean, you know, it's not happening. Not at this time. I mean, you know, people have gotten a taste of freedom. They've gotten a taste of religious freedom. They're not interested in going back to the old, you know, communist ways. There's no question about it. You know, I have to tell you too, just getting back to, you know, the work with law enforcement and everything else, that, you know, the most important thing is getting the information to law enforcement. And I think that everybody that's been involved in Delphi has done that in one way, one shape, you know, or the other, just gotten the information over there. And that's the most important thing, because as I said about ourselves, we're tools, you're a tool. I mean, the other YouTubers, the other people that are sending over tips, please send over tips if you have them to law enforcement in Delphi. I mean, that's the most important thing, giving them the information, because ultimately, you know, when it comes down to it, it's going to be law enforcement that's going to make it or break it. I mean, and certainly all the help they can get from us is fine. But the bottom line is, you know, they have to have information, and by giving them information, it's up to them to sift through it, and they've got to investigate it, and that's their job. That's why I don't take a lot of, you know, we never take a lot of credit, because to be honest with you, I mean, we're a tool. We can put the information out there. We've been successful. We've been lucky. We've been fortunate. We've been honored to work with a lot of good, terrific people, including yourself. Like I said, if it wasn't for you, we'd never even be in Delphi. But the bottom line is, you know, you take the information, you hand it over to them, and then it's up to them. And, you know, I mean, there isn't anybody I know that's involved in any of these cases, and especially Delphi, that isn't in it for the right reason. Now, there may be some people that are in it for the wrong reason, okay, for a payday on YouTube or something, I don't know. But to be honest with you, I think everybody pretty much that I've run into and I'm friends with, you know, has their heart in the right place, and they're just trying to get justice, you know, for Libby and Abby. There'll never be closure. There never is closure when you lose a child. It just doesn't happen, you know, somebody you love. But there is justice, and hopefully, you know, because of the work of everybody involved and all the YouTubers, you know, that's going to be a piece that, you know, we're going to bring to the table. We're going to help with some justice here. We'll see. Time is going to tell. What is on your agenda? Is your agenda to someday go back to the Ukraine?
Maybe. I don't know. But I know it's never going to be the same.
No.
And the mentality of the people are going to be more standoffish, more. I mean, I've dealt with people that have dealt with war and stuff like that. It changes them a lot. I sent you photos and stuff of my neighborhood and things like that. I would go out for walks, you know, beautiful areas, go to cafes, play some chess with my buddies. You know, I created a little intelligence network with military officers, some tech people and so forth, and we were to analyze things. I had another group that focused on economic development and industrial park development, and we were actually advising the Minister of Economic and Development, as well as the Prime Minister, and they came down and watched us give a speech as expert panelist on how to develop 25 industrial parks and so forth and so on. Now I pitched a few ideas that maybe those parks may need to be used to build prefab housing for refugees. I mean, he's destroyed city after city.
After city after city.
But you don't know when that may, when that need may arise. And as long as Putin's in power, if you build anything there, it's risk. So will you get international investors and so forth that were part of the Chamber of Commerce and so forth that I often, dealt with? Will those international investors come back under such risk? I think not. Even though there's a lot of those companies still there, it's just going to really hurt Ukraine. I mean, my home state had about 170 billion a year per capita income several years ago. Kentucky, right? Small state, 1/10 of the population of Ukraine, and Ukraine had the same per capita income or GDP. Sorry, same GDP, and that was before Crimea was cut off, which is only 4 billion or so. But Russia was able to take Crimea, militarize it, just as he did Chechnya, sent 10,000 Chechens into Ukraine, sent thousands of Crimeans into Ukraine. And if he was successful in taking Ukraine, he would have militarized it and sent it towards NATO. So we know his game plan. And I've sent out, position papers and so forth and so on, that it can't happen. And I think there's a lot of counter policies being done to try to make sure that doesn't happen. I'm not going to get into all those things. And it's sad that there is a quasi-proxy conflict with Russia, but it's best that that occurs close to their border versus somewhere right in Central Europe. And it has to be done. And I think the Secretary of Defense and so forth understand that. The Ukrainians understand that. Definitely NATO understands it. No one likes war. They don't want it. But it's just like hunting down these serial killers. They have to be caught. And putting out as much information and assisting in any way possible to make sure that they get stopped is a good thing. And that's why, a lot of people say I'm arrogant, narcissistic, they say it all. Call me a dick, but we did good work and we tried to be as professional as possible. We created a huge list of people, lots of comparison contrast. And we shared that with law enforcement. We encouraged a witness suspect review board with the Indiana State Police, local detectives, the FBI, etc., to go through that list of people actually there and funnel down to probabilities, because we think that trumps hype that has hit the media of various people that you haven't proved to be anywhere near the bridge at or about the time that Abby and Libby were there. So I think that's a primary focus, and the sheriff and his crew rented a building to do interviews a few months ago. And I think they're going to really go after that for some time. And we just simply sent we've got hundreds of file folders, volumes of information collected and on the cloud that Sandra maintains. She's the gatekeeper of all that information. And we narrowed it down to, a short Excel file and send it over to law enforcement that should help them. And those people that say, oh, it's all about you and this and that. No, it's not. All of our videos combined are less than 1 or 2 videos that other YouTubers make that just ramble on, right? So we put together some massive amounts of information. And I think we've done good, and it far exceeds expectations from, a YouTuber, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe I am a little bit arrogant with it. I don't know. But, I'm definitely proud of our work and proud of Sandra and Tammy, Frank, Ken, and many others that we worked with. And of course, you all.
Thank you.
It's just, we built some amazing teams and about 2,000 people that were active. And I think combined, we probably contributed 50 to 70 million dollars in man hours to work that case. Just a private YouTuber.
Well, let me tell you something. Nobody can say that you and your team has not worked hard on the Delphi case. I'll tell you, there's no question about it. I mean, people can love you, people can hate you, okay? I mean, all of us have our critics out there. All of us have our fans out there. Bottom line is, as long as we know that we're trying to do the right thing and we're putting our right foot forward, and we're keeping law enforcement abreast of what's going on and working with them when we have to work with them, just like any other case we've been working for the last 20 some years, because ultimately it's going to be on them, and it's going to be on their prosecutor on what he needs and if he's going to take a case forward. And, ultimately, if he takes a case forward, can he win that case? That's what it's all going to depend on. Because sometimes, it's funny, you can pretty much, catch somebody, but you can't prove it. You can't always prove it. You can't prove it's somebody. And, so I think it's going to get interesting, but I have to say that I have a lot of respect for you and your team and for the whole community. To a large extent. There's some people I don't have a lot of respect for, but for the mass majority of YouTubers, I believe their heart's in the right place. And I believe they're trying to do their best to get as much information as they can over to law enforcement.
Well, that was another reason we reached out to you all. I don't know why my mind works that way, but, if you look at those books that I've written, I've dealt with Noriega, Saddam, Osama, Gaddafi, et cetera, right? And I don't know what drives me to get involved in those things. And I've literally, created channels, back channels. I put words in Gorbachev's mouth in the past, trying to get him to guarantee Iraq's borders if they would back out of Kuwait. There's lots of diplomatic things that I've done over the years. And I went to diplomacy school for master's, and I considered being a diplomat, but then I didn't want the bureaucracy. I wanted to do it on my own, just as you do it on your own, right?
Right.
And, I dealt with this stuff for decades. And I'm like, well, John Kelly has this persistence. I don't know what drives him, but he's been doing this for decades. And I see that same type of drive. You call it an obsession, I think, in many of your Dark Mind series, but it's just this drive to take out evil in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that, as some way to try to understand myself. Well, why am I spending that time when I could just go drink coffee, and I wanted to quit many, many times. And I didn't, because I've seen you all successfully work towards it, towards those goals, and take on hobby cases, etc. Like the Long Island, serial killer case. I've been to Long Island. I worked in New York for 2 years in the late 80s. I think 88, 89. and I've been up and down the Long Island
Freeway.
coastline, etc. I've been to the Amityville Horror House. Dated a girl that had like a multi-million-dollar home close to the former raceway there and so forth. And she drove me all around the area and stuff. And I look at that case, and I made a couple notes here somewhere. And I thought maybe if you start profiling the guy, and I watched a movie about it a few years ago, right? Or a year or so ago. And they said that one of the first victims, she had called 911 and said someone is after her, going to kill her or something like that. And she just left the home. And Sharon or something like this, I can't remember her name, but she inferred that she was leaving that home. Maybe if she was a sex worker, someone drove her there. So you got a small POI pool that most likely law enforcement looked at of the homeowner, the driver, and then maybe a peeper, someone that could walk to that home or boat to that home. And if you start profiling them, the Radix model, sexual control, maybe execution, then maybe not visionary, but missionary. If they're attacking strictly sex workers, then they're trying to rid people of that particular crowd of people. Or hedonistic, maybe, could be thrill. Lust, I don't know. Comfort, unless those girls were robbed each time, I don't know. And then, of course, some control. So, is it really a small suspect pool if you're profiling them using your, criterias? I don't know. It's tough.
When you're looking at the list, Long Island serial killer, you're looking at an extremely sadistic, sexually violent serial killer. And the woman you're talking about is actually the last victim, but we don't know if she's the victim or not. Her name's Shannon Gilbert. God bless her.
Yes.
We don't know if she was specifically a victim or not. Law enforcement, if I'm correct, and please, the audience will tell me if I'm not, have not sincerely ruled her in as a victim of the Long Island serial killer. Harvey, we're going to have to go. We're running late on time. I want to thank you so much. We'll talk to you again. God bless you. God bless your family. Congratulations on achieving what you've achieved and getting out of there and coming to this country. And thank you so much for all the work you and your team has put into Delphi. And let today be the day. And I'll talk to you soon, my friend. God bless.
Agreed. Let today be the day. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. I appreciate your friendship over the years. And we've learned a great deal from you. And I respect and appreciate that greatly. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. And to our audience, as always, please stay safe. Take care of yourself. Make it a great day. And from all of us, God bless. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.